Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. If you could please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Griscoviac.
Here.
Councilmember Ray Rauer.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez Jr.
Here.
Councilmember Geisler.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here. Thank you. Why don't we adopt this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Carlson, second by Geisler to adopt the agenda. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and the agenda is adopted. We're up to the approval of the minutes from the November 15th meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion by Carlson and a second by Griscoviac to approve the minutes from the November 15th, 2022 meeting. Is there any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. One abstention, Councilmember Ray Rauer. We have 5 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first one is to approve the waiver of Christmas tree sales license fees for Boy Scout Troop 212. Boy Scout Troop 212 has submitted an application to operate a Christmas tree lot at 1919 Coon Rapids Boulevard over at the Coon Rapids VFW. The troop has requested this in years past, and the council has always granted the waiver. The Boy Scouts are a non-profit organization, so we're looking to approve the waiver of a $90 license fee and a $25 background investigation fee for Boy Scout Troop 212 to operate a Christmas tree lot at 1919 Coon Rapids Boulevard. I like the timing of this. I'm pretty sure they're almost sold out of trees. They've been doing a land office business down there. All right, the next item is item 3 on this evening's agenda, to approve a recycling center staffing agreement with Atlas Staffing Incorporated. The Coon Rapids Recycling Center contracts staffing for its daily needs at the facility. An annual contract with Atlas Staffing Incorporated was approved by the City Council on November 3rd, 2021. Atlas has proven to be a great fit at the recycling center, and staff would like to renew the contract from November 1st, 2022 through November 1st, 2023. So we're looking to approve the contract with Atlas Staffing Incorporated for contracted staffing at the recycling center. The next item is item 4 on this evening's agenda, and that's to adopt Resolution 22-111, approving the Sustainability Commission appointment. Keegan McClellan submitted an application for the Sustainability Commission. After discussion with the applicant, the Sustainability Commission recommends Keegan McClellan's appointment to fill a vacancy with a term ending December 31st, 2023. So we're looking to adopt Resolution 22-111, appointing Keegan McClellan to the Sustainability Commission. And the next item on our consent agenda is to approve the 2023 business license renewals. All of the license applications are renewals, as indicated on the tabulation. Most license renewals are complete, with the exception of those businesses missing the indicated items. Certain licenses, such as tobacco and massage therapists, are approved by staff and are not part of the attachment. The renewals were processed using the 2023 fee schedule, and all missing items are expected to be received by Friday, December 16th, 2022. So we're looking to approve the 2023 business license renewals as listed on the attached tabulations, contingent upon receipt of additional information as noted, and subject to compliance with all city codes. And then item number 6, which is the last item on our consent agenda, excuse me, is to adopt Resolution 22-113, accepting a donation of $20,000 grant for rescue equipment. The fire department has received a similar grant from the Koss family for rescue equipment in 2018 and 2021. The current grant of $20,000 is also intended for purchasing rescue equipment within the fire department. The grant dollars will be used to purchase equipment to improve the department's ability to perform rescues during emergency operations. So we're looking to adopt Resolution 22-113, accepting a grant donation of $20,000.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Johnson.
I'd move approval and adoption of the 5 items on the consent agenda, subject to the stated conditions in those items.
Second?
Motion by Johnson and a second by Carlson. Is there discussion or questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and that motion carries. Item 7 is to hold a currency exchange license public hearing and consider license renewal for your exchange. So let's see. Ms. Lensmeyer, do you want me to just touch on the highlights, or you want?
Mr. Mayor, just briefly, the council is asked to conduct a public hearing and then concur with the Minnesota Department of Commerce's renewal of the 2023 currency exchange license for your exchange at 3070 Coon Rapids Boulevard. The Minnesota Department of Commerce has conducted a state-level background review on the appropriate personnel, and no matters that would impact concurrence with the license were discovered, so we recommend approval once the public hearing is held.
All right, very good. Does council have any questions before we open the public hearing? Hearing none. In the matter of the currency exchange license, public hearing, we will open the public hearing. Is anybody here to address council for a public hearing on the currency exchange license renewal? Anybody here for the public hearing on that? Then we'll close the public hearing and move on to the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Geisler.
I'll make a motion to concur with the Minnesota Department of Commerce renewal of the 2023 currency exchange license for your exchange at 3070 Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Second.
Motion by Geisler and a second by Ray Rauer. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are up to item 8, to hold a Truth-In-Taxation public hearing and consider Resolution 22-109 and 22-110, adopting the 2023 budget and tax levy. Mr. Stemwedel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here with Ashley Hanson, our Finance Director, to present the Truth-In-Taxation hearing and to overview the 2023 proposed budget, which you'll be considering after the Truth-In-Taxation hearing is complete. Just a little background before we jump into some of the more figures and impacts of the 23 budget. From a public standpoint, we start talking about the budget in August. The proposed budget's presented to the City Council at that time. We go through the various changes, the departments, a lot of questions are asked, that sort of thing, and then Council provides staff with their direction on what to set the preliminary levy for come September. So by state law, the city has to set a preliminary levy. That levy is then certified to Anoka County. Anoka County uses that information to produce the Truth-In-Taxation hearing notice. So if you're a property owner in anywhere in the state, really, you get a notice in the mail in November that has your values in there and your projected 2023 taxes. So homeowners in Coon Rapids would have received that sometime between November 11th and November 24th. New this year was actually some supplemental information about the various budget changes for each of the local jurisdictions. So it kind of goes through the state, the county, the school district, special districts, that sort of thing. It also includes information on where the public can provide testimony on the budget, which is here at the Truth-In-Taxation hearing. So the date of tonight's meeting was published, the location, and we did allow for Zoom participation if anybody wanted to do it remotely as well. So tonight we have that. We'll consider the levy in the budget tonight as well. And then the last day to certify our levy to the state and county is December 28th. We always start out the budget process sort of focusing on certain core principles. In our case, the 3 that we've stood by for quite a few years now is to first consider and address core services within the community. Obviously, as a local government, we exist for a specific reason. That's to provide things like police, fire, infrastructure, streets, you name it, parks, that sort of thing. And so we really keep that in mind from a staff standpoint as we're developing that budget and when we present it to the City Council. We also need to respond to budget needs responsibly. Certainly, there are a lot of things to respond to this year, and I'll get into that a little bit in just a moment. But we sort of keep in our mind the taxpayer that's at home is going to get that truth-in-taxation notice, and we know there's a lot going on with value as well, which can really complicate and confuse the situation. So it's a complicated formula that we get into, but hopefully we can make some sense of it for you. And then finally, we always want to keep in mind our capital investments and long-term staffing. We put a lot of effort into projecting out about 10 years for capital equipment. Some of the things we purchase can be very expensive, and we're trying to sort of moderate our increases over time and keep a nice fund balance such that if we have to buy a fire truck, for example, we don't see these huge jumps up and down in our levy just to pay for that. Really, we're trying to smooth out over time, absorb those dips and those peaks as we go. I mentioned a few of the budgetary impacts that we're experiencing in 2023, and I can say this was one of the more unique and challenging budgeting processes that I've been through in my 11 years now with the city of Coon Rapids. The biggest piece of that was the loss of local government aid. So for those who aren't aware, the state provides funding, or has at least provided funding to the city in the form of local government aid. That's meant to help reduce the burden of the property taxpayer for city services. And there's a complicated formula that the state uses to determine who gets what for local government aid. There's a lot of cities that heavily rely on local government aid, and there's a lot of cities who don't get any at all. Well, your position within that formula changes over time depending on your property values and other indicators that really had predicted a couple of years ago that Coon Rapids was going to lose that over a couple-year period. Well, due to some legislative changes, we're losing all that all at once next year. There was a bill in both the chambers at the state legislature last year that would have changed the formula, and either way, the city of Coon Rapids would have been better off than under the current law. Well, a lot of things got bogged down in the legislature last year, and this was one of them. And so the law didn't change. We're subject to the current law, and we're going to go from about $1.2 million in local government aid to zero, which is a pretty big pill to swallow when you're a city of our size, and you've relied on that.
The state had a surplus or something.
And $17.6 billion, I heard today. So. Now, that's not to say the legislature doesn't pick that up again. I'm hearing they likely will in this next session, but it doesn't do us a lot of good here today. So that's the reality we were faced with. And of course, no news to anybody really, but there's been a lot of inflationary pressures over the last year. We look at our budget just for motor fuels, utility services. Motor fuels up $110,000 projected for next year. Utility services up $215,000. General supplies and basically everything we buy, just like you at home or at the grocery store, those are increases we're seeing too. And then of course wages. What we're finding in our market is we've got certain pockets of employees that the market and the wage pressure is very high. You think about like our police officers, for example, it's very competitive to hire police officers right now as we've gone through union negotiations the last several years, couple years especially. We've really had to push upward on those wages just to stay competitive with our neighbors and to be able to offer similar starting wages and, well, really wages completely across the board to our officers just to try to maintain personnel and hire good personnel. So something every city is seeing. In fact, I'm sure every employer is seeing. Continuing on with budget impacts, we did add one full-time position. We actually subtracted a different full-time position. In the case of the police department, we are adding a full-time mental health professional. This person actually started with the city this week, yesterday. We sort of accelerated that once we felt comfortable this program was underway. The good news with that program is we're using opioid settlement dollars to pay for the majority of that position. This was something that we've experimented with the last couple of years through a service agreement and in partnership with the city of Blaine to see what value a mental health professional would bring to the police department. Turns out it's helped immensely with all those mental health type calls that we receive and has reduced significantly the amount of repeat issues we've had with certain folks in the community because we're able to address their needs in a different way, sort of take the police out of the equation and bring in this professional who can get them in touch with resources and other needs that they have to help avoid future police calls. So that's been great, and we're going to bring that full time now, and we're expecting some pretty significant success with that as well. From a fire standpoint, as council's well aware, we're building a fire station, and while that is impacted really across two different budget years in terms of the immediate impact, from a budgetary standpoint, it's really hitting in 2023 from a debt levy perspective. So we issued that debt this past summer. That debt load will start to come due next year, and so we had to increase our debt levy to account for that to the tune of about $750,000 in 2023. Continuing on, under transportation, we are planning a fairly aggressive street reconstruction program, albeit smaller than we have the last several years, and there's a couple of factors to that. One being budgetary sustainability. We wanted to peel back a little bit because we have some other capital and bonding needs for the community in the next couple of years. But also just, we've been very aggressive on street reconstruction, sort of catching up to some of their state programs that are out there, but still planning on that 4.5 miles for about $4.6 million next year. And then continuing on, seal coating and overlays of 27 miles to the tune of $925,000. Park improvements, we have a pretty significant chunk of money yet to spend from the park bond referendum, which is passed now several years ago. About $1.6 million that would be dedicated to a trail improvement, the Coon Creek Trail, that was planned in the 2022 budget, will be carried forward into 2023. We hope to be starting it then. There are some other hurdles we have to jump yet to get there, but that is a part of the 23 budget. In Riverview Park, sort of a unique replacement of a ice rink system that sits on the pavement in the parking lot out there. The one that's there has reached the end of its useful life, and we are expecting to replace that. And then finally, under parks, we have the Elflin Park design continuation. That process started here in the last year. We want to accelerate that to more of a plan-ready status and engineering-ready status by the end of 2023, so that we can, more formally plan for any park improvements that might come to Elflin in future years, something we'd have to be thoughtful about and budget for, in 2024, 2025, and beyond, perhaps. Rolling stock, as I mentioned, or capital equipment, is something we spend quite a bit of time on because, again, those purchases are very expensive. We take that 10-year look. We have certain schedules depending on the vehicle type for when they get replaced. Something from like a squad car, for example, that we might replace every 4 years, to a dump truck that we're looking to get more like 10 years out of. If we can extend that useful life, we do. It's not uncommon. In fact, I'd say it's very common for us to look at a piece of equipment and say, all right, we can get another year, maybe we can get another 2 years out of it. Every little bit that we can extend it out helps the capital fund. Sometimes we have to go the other way, though, and replace something that's been a bit of a lemon. Looking at 2023, we are anticipating the purchase of a new dump truck for $340,000. Wasn't that long ago, and I was shocked that a dump truck would cost $250,000. This is really telling of the market for any sort of vehicle, especially heavy equipment like that. The competition is just rising the prices. The lack of available resources to produce these pieces of equipment has certainly increased the prices, and then just general inflation. So that number has increased rapidly over the last couple of years, and we're feeling the impact of that. Purchase of a new sidewalk machine with a plow. We've kind of converted our sidewalk machines here in the last few years, and this would be, I think, the final one in that replacement cycle to kind of get us up to the 5 we need to be at a status quo, and then it'll just be replacement of future machines as they come due for replacement. Police vehicles, I mentioned, we go through a lot of those. We have $450,000 worth of vehicle replacements planned in the police department for next year. Again, this is another area that we've seen rapid increases in prices over the past several years, and it's having an impact. And then finally, we do have a replacement plan for, critical IT infrastructure. Our number for this is always around that $100,000 to $150,000 mark. Next year, we're looking at about $130,000. Just a final slide for me, and then I'll pass it to Ashley here in a second, is the personnel side. So our general fund is primarily made up of people costs, as you can imagine. It's about 80% of what's in the general fund is related to staffing. I already mentioned the new police officer, or the mental health position that'll be funded in the police department, that is being funded through other sources, not property tax dollars. We did reduce our overall staffing by 1 in another department, community development, in the building inspections area, because we're just seeing some less activity compared to future years or past years. So we felt comfortable pulling that one back. So it's really a net zero, but a gain for us because we're not paying for that one position through general fund dollars. We do have general wage increases included in the budget, as you would expect. What's different, though, as I mentioned earlier, is the negotiated market adjustments, especially as we've seen here recently with some of our union groups for market increases, as those upward pressures on wages just continue, and we have to stay competitive. From a good news perspective, our health insurance premium increase was very acceptable, I'll call it, this year. It was less than 5% overall. The effect of that to the general fund budget's about 3%, which is probably the lowest we've had in 4 or 5 years. We've had some other years where it actually went down, but not recently. One other area the city staff had talked to council a lot about in the last few years is the rising cost of workers' compensation. So this has been an issue across cities in the state. I stay closely involved with the League of Minnesota Cities and their insurance trust, the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust. And about a handful of years ago, the state legislature changed workers' compensation laws as it relates to post-traumatic stress disorder claims for, really for anybody, but primarily geared towards first responders, police, fire, et cetera. So as time went on, the last handful of years, we've seen a dramatic increase across the state in PTSD-related claims, which have led to some expensive payouts, like I said, everywhere, really. Coon Rapids has not been immune to that. We've certainly had our own share of PTSD-related claims in the last handful of years. And as you might imagine, the insurance companies got to raise their rates in order to stay solvent and to sort of anticipate those future increases. So this nearly $400,000 of impact is both sort of catching up from last year's increase that affected 22 and anticipating the increase for 2023. And that'll kind of catch us up, hopefully, for a while. What I'm hearing from the insurance trust more recently, and we're waiting for some specific data from them, is that the increase in those claims is starting to moderate a little bit. You know, the incline isn't this anymore. It's maybe, a little flatter. Still going to go up, but much more reasonable in 2023, and then we'll see about 2024 and beyond. And because we had a few things that were impacting our budget more in 2023 than we would have preferred, again, the LGA, the inflation, there were a number of things that we did to try to adjust for that without impacting property tax owners. One of them was using some federal dollars through ARPA and CARES Act that we received in recent years. But the other way we were approaching that is, rather than budgeting 100% for personnel in 2023, we did anticipate about $188,000 of vacancy savings, essentially planning for positions to be open for a little while, not budgeting 100%, and therefore not charging the levy to account for 100%. We naturally have some position vacancies in any given year. In council, we've had those conversations in recent years. Sometimes it's a big number, sometimes it's a small number. So I don't have any concerns about budgeting for that. It's just one of those things we're gonna have to keep our eye on as we move forward, of how much and how comfortable we are with that number and whether or not we need to adjust it in future budget years. And with that, I'm gonna pass the baton to Ashley. Go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you, Mr. Stumwettle. So continuing on with budgetary impacts, one area that affects our overall levy is the amount of money needed to repay debt. So levy supported debt service for 2023, we see a total increase of $260,000. This is kind of made up of two things. The first off is the addition of the $750,000 in payments for the capital improvement bond that we issued this year for the fire station. And then to kind of help lessen the impact to taxpayers, there's a $500,000 decrease in debt related to street reconstruction. We have a bond issue from 2013 that fell off, and then we're also able to utilize residual funds in the debt service funds from bond issues that were matured, and so there's some leftover dollars there that we use to write down or buy down the required levy for 2023. All right. The city's utility funds consist of the water, sewer, and storm drain fund. These are set up to be self-sustaining, so revenue should be covering expenditures. Consistent with our budget principles, the 23 budget includes continued investment in replacement and maintenance of critical city infrastructure. In the water fund, we are assuming a modest rate increase. for 2023, though we're currently undergoing a utility rate study, and so pending the conclusion of that, we'll have final amounts to recommend to council in the first quarter of this upcoming year. Capital improvements in the water fund, so we've got 1.2 million for replacing water mains. A large portion of that is related to a county project on Northdale Boulevard. 800,000 for various well, pump, and rehabilitation projects. 1.6 million to finish the ongoing water meter replacement project. Some funding in there for various equipment replacement, and then in addition, we have initial funding for a new water tower, should the council approve that, decide to move forward with that project. In the sewer fund, we are not anticipating a rate increase for 2023. The Met Council disposal fee, which is considerably the largest expense in this fund, increased by 10.25% over 2022. Half of this is related to a Met Council budget increase, and the rest has to do with where we fall with the overall flow with our neighboring communities. Capital investments include sewer line replacement in conjunction with the street reconstruction project, $2 million for large diameter sanitary sewer lining, $250,000 for various lift station projects, and then there's also funding in there for regular equipment replacement. In the storm drain fund, no storm rate increases are projected for 2023. And then the capital improvement, we have $850,000 for replacement included in the street reconstruction project, and $300,000 for repair at 106th. All right, so total budgeted revenue, so for 2023 compared to our current amended budget, we actually have a decrease of 8.75%. This is largely driven from the capital project fund. So included in the 2022 budget, we had $17.7 million for bond issuance. About $12 million of that was for the fire station. So in 2023, we're only assuming $6.1 million related to street reconstruction and then the park referendum bond. So that's driving a lot of that decrease. You'll notice one thing to point out was the golf fund has a 21% increase in revenue. They've experienced really good business the last couple of years. A lot of this is related to the restaurant returning to more of a normal after COVID-related closures. Total budgeted expenditures, so our 23 proposed budget, we actually see a decrease of just under 4% compared to our current amended budget. Again, largely driven by a decrease in the capital project funds. That new fire station construction is kind of those once every 10, 15-year projects, so we see almost a $9 million decrease in those. Other things to note are debt service expenditures going up 21%. So with the issuance of that bond, we'll see an large increase in the debt expenditures related to that. And then the other thing to point out would be the Gulf Fund. So revenues are going up, so our expenditures related to restaurant operations. Our total citywide property tax levy is $33,314,830, consisting of our general fund levy, various debt service levies, and capital project levies, and then the HRA also adopts a separate levy. Preliminary tax rate for 2023 is 35.189%. All right. So this slide shows some historical tax levy increases. So as you can see by the graph, about 79% of our total levy goes towards our general fund, and that's what the city uses to pay for day-to-day expenditures and making sure that we're providing our core services to our residents. The total levy for 2023 is proposed to increase by 7.5%. Just kind of want to note that in 2021, you'll see that we had a total increase of 0.89%. At that time, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty, so that's really a historic low for the city. Over the last 10 years, the average increase is about 4.1%. So this graph shows a kind of historical trend of our city tax rate. So as you can see, so the The orange bars is the city tax levy. The blue bars are the tax capacity or the overall value of the community. And so as you can see, our property values have been going up while the city's been adopting modest tax levy increases. And so you can see in the yellow line there that our tax rate has really been dropping considerably over the last 10 years. And we have quite a large drop here in '23, a lot of it related to the values of homes going up. The average increase in the state was about 20-some%. Okay. So this slide kind of compares Coon Rapids with neighboring communities in Anoka County. The gray bars are the tax rates for the current year, 2022. The light blue bars are the proposed rates for 2023. And the dark blue bar is the Coon Rapids proposed rate of 35.89%. With the activity in the real estate market, as you can see, pretty much every entity is experiencing a decrease in their tax rate. But that being said, we're still 7th among comparable cities in Anoka County. So this is a sample tax calculation for the median single-family home. The median assessed value for 2023 is $291,200. It has a 19.1% increase in value over 2022. Now, typically, as the value goes up, the homestead exclusion goes down. So unfortunately, with such large increases, this home also saw a large decrease in their homestead exclusion, resulting in a taxable market value and taxable capacity both increased by 22.2%. So then we take the tax capacity and we multiply that by our tax rate, and that generates our estimated city tax. So for 2023, the estimated city tax is estimated to increase by $104 or 11.8%. And that equates to just under $9 a month. Now, every property is different. There's a lot of factors that go into the calculation of property taxes. So we definitely, if you have questions, you're encouraged to reach out to our city assessing department. Is wonderful and is happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay. This slide shows the distribution of property taxes using 2022 data. So for every property tax dollar paid, 35 cents goes to the school district, 34 cents goes to the city, 27 cents goes to the county, 4 cents goes to other jurisdictions, and the city HRA is actually included in that amount. Okay. We encourage everyone to go ahead and log on to the city website. We have the full 330-page budget document there if you really want to dive into the detail, as well as a 4-page budget and brief that really touches on the big things that are proposed for the year. With that, we'll stand for any questions
All right.
that the council may have.
Council, any questions? Pablo?
Under the section when it comes to the equipment and the fuel, so it was like $340,000 for the dump truck. Does that include the replacement cost too? Like say we sold an older dump truck, is that included in that cost as well?
The
Or does it offset?
$340,000 would be the cost for the replacement. If we anticipate being able to generate any revenue from that sale, we also include that in revenue in the capital equipment fund.
Okay, so it's just not a straight up like, okay, I'm gonna trade this one in for this one or use those funds towards the newer,
Yeah,
or,
it depends on the condition of the equipment.
okay. And then just one more question, with the fuel, do we purchase our fuel in bulk?
Yeah, we actually have a contract,
Okay.
contracted rates with, I believe Anoka County is who we get that through.
Okay, no, thank you.
Other questions? One correction is, your map or your calendar timeline started out, you said we start working on this in August. You guys start working on
Yeah.
this like in April.
Yeah, to be fair, yes, the public sort of interaction with the budget begins in August. Staff does start in April, in May. By June, we've got our draft budgets in. June and July, we're working through everything that goes into that 300-page document, such that we can present it to council in August. So it's frankly a year-round activity.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson?
First of all, I'd like to say that budget in brief that you prepared is really an excellent document. It's extremely easy to read, it's helpful, and Mayor, I appreciated the message at the end. That was a well-done message, and it really does reflect what the city council has talked about and kind of what we wrestled with this year and how we kind of view this budget and our obligations to the city and our acknowledgement that everybody's in a tough place at this point in time. And with that, I'd like to, well, have we done the
Nope.
hearing?
Yeah,
Okay.
If we could open the hearing and.
Yep.
take
Let's
testimony.
have the hearing.
Yeah. So if there's no further questions from council, we will open the Truth-In-Taxation hearing as we consider the budget. And the Truth-In-Taxation public hearing is really about the budget. It's not about your home values tonight. That's a different night that we have that conversation. So is anybody here to address council for the Truth-In-Taxation public hearing? One more time, anybody here for the Truth-In-Taxation public hearing? And we'll close that
Is there
portion.
anybody online?
Mayor, council, just gonna make mention, we do have one person online. I did ask if they were here to just listen or want to provide testimony. I didn't get a response, so I'm going to assume that means here to listen, but,
Okay, so we'll let that gavel stand then.
yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, then, I would move Resolution 22-109, adopting the 2023 tax levy.
Second.
Motion by Johnson and a second by Geisler. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
just like to echo Councilmember Johnson's comment about the work that was put into this budget this year. I mean, it's 325 pages long. When the staff came to us earlier in the year with the budget, we were looking at double-digit increases. And I, for one, was looking around the community, and we're all kind of seeing a lot of pressures with inflation and everything. And we did a lot of work as a team to kind of really pare this thing down. You know, it's hard to go through this thing line by line, but our city staff actually did that for us. They helped me learn a few things along the way, including to Councilmember Hernandez Jr.'s point about capital equipment that we sell. So earlier this year, we sold that fire truck, and the proceeds of that were like $300,000. I didn't see that in the 2023 budget, so I went to staff, and they explained to me it will be in the next year's budget. We could have potentially lowered our levy a little bit by that, but by not doing that, our capital equipment fund stays a lot more solvent and will actually help us moderate future levy increases. So there's just a lot of stuff that goes into this budget. A lot of people have a lot of feedback on it. I just want to say it was well thought out. I think we're getting a pretty big bang for the buck this year.
Excellent. Other discussion? Oh, Mr.
I
Stemwell?
could actually, so I misspoke maybe a little, I didn't see it correctly. There was, Doug Hoover was online and did ask a couple of questions, so maybe I can just respond to those if we could before the vote's taken.
Okay, so we'll just put our vote on hold, but we've got a motion in a second.
Yes,
Okay.
if we could, just under discussion. So one thing he brought up was a concern about the noted reduction in homestead exclusion when value increases and a tax increase on a particular home I have. And so the homestead exclusion's a state law, and so there's a certain formula and a threshold for value, and as the value of your home increases, the amount that's reduced through that exclusion also decreases. So your value goes up, your exclusion goes down, and it sort of rapidly impacts your property values if that's what you're experiencing. And so that's not something that the city controls. It's a state formula. It was a state program designed to provide property tax relief for houses of a lower value, and has an adjustment period, and eventually, and it's something where
$413,000.
$13,000 a year, you don't get any exclusion. So he also had a question about this, he calls it the sanitation increase of 12.8%, but more so economic development housing. What is that for? So if the, I think he may be referring to
There's
the,
the insert, yeah. So the,
oh, go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah, yep.
the increase in the sanitation relates to the recycling fund, so, because it's such a small budget, it doesn't take much. That 12% really isn't that high of an increase. And then the economic development housing relates to the housing program fund, and then also the HRA fund is in there.
So those were the two questions. I apologize to Mr. Hoover for, he didn't show up for some reason in my chat box over here, so I wasn't able to ask those questions prior to that, but I'm glad Steve popped out and let me know. All right.
Very good. Let's go back to council. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and that one carries. Why am I just about to gavel? I want to gavel tonight. Yeah, and that was adopting the 2023 tax levy, so we still have one more.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Johnson.
I'd move approval of Resolution 22-110, adopting the 2023 budget.
Second.
Motion by Johnson and a second by Geisler. Is there discussion on this? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you for all of that work and for that presentation. All right, and we are up to item 9. Consider planning case 22-22, consider adoption of ordinance 2277, multiple pet location, city code section 11-201. And I don't see Mr. Crowell here, so Mr. Fernelius, did you want to hit on this, or do you want me to read your notes?
Sure, Mr. Mayor and Council, I can just briefly touch on this. So this is an item that we had previously presented to you for introduction on November 15th. It really relates to updating our zoning code to make sure that the definitions of multiple pet permit and kennel are consistent with the other code changes that council has authorized with regard to the number of multiple pets that you can have. So this essentially updates that definition from 3 to 4 animals so that our zoning code and our city code are in sync.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Fernelius on this? Okay.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Rayrauer?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2277, revising the definition of multiple pet location and kennel, and amending city code section 11-201, and authorize summary publication.
Second?
Motion by Rayrauer and a second by Carlson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. You know, an item like this, I should say, we've had a lot of discussion about this. Just, now it's just culminating in a vote, so it's not, we're just blowing past this. All right, item 10, consider adoption of ordinances amending chapters 6-100 dog control, 6-200 multiple pet, and 6-400 cat control. Speaking of conversations and discussions. The proposed ordinances were introduced at the November 15th City Council meeting after previously being discussed at the April 12th City Council work session. The proposed revisions include updating any Minnesota state statute references, propose the elimination of the requirement for dog licensure and cat registration, and a change to the multiple pet code that would require the multiple pet permit for the 4th animal. The proposed ordinances reflect the discussion from the work session along with some non-substantive administrative cleanup of the language, and the ordinances are here for our review. Ms. Lensmeyer, anything? You had a very comprehensive note. I just dove right into it. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay.
Your Honor?
Councilmember Rayrauer?
Well, I'm wondering if Ms. Lensmeyer can share the reasoning why we and we've discussed this, but for the folks at home too, why we are eliminating the requirement for dog licensure and cat registration.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Ray Rower, when this was looked at and discussed at the April work session, we came to the realization that there should be thousands of dogs licensed and we have a few hundred, right? So we're not hitting it, and it's not being used for the purpose it was originally intended. We used to use the registry, access to police officers during the day and at night to, if they had a dog running loose, they could grab it, they have the tag, we could get them the information, and now pets are microchipped, so.
Thank you.
And Chief, we've got the microchip readers right out in the police station, don't we now, police department?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Each one of our community service officers has a microchip reader in their vehicles, so they use them quite frequently every time they encounter a loose vehicle or a loose animal out there.
Yeah, all right, very good. Any other questions for Ms. Lensmeyer?
You're on.
Councilmember, whoever, Ray Rower. Councilmember Ray Rower.
Okay. I make a motion to adopt ordinances 2274, 2275, and 2276, amending chapter 6-100 dog control, 6-200 multiple pet, and 6-400 cat control, and authorize summary publication of the ordinances.
Second?
Motion by Ray Rower and a second by Carlson. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kraskowiak?
I mentioned in our last meeting that I support this measure. I think it's kind of a nice thing that we can kind of return some of this self-regulation back to the citizens, because we're really not having any issues on this. But I do want to point out that even though we're not going to require licensure of these animals, there still are pet regulations in the city of Coon Rapids, and they're actually meant to, protect all the residents. So just a couple of them noted. Owner-provided tags with the dog information on it, and one of the things that most people are doing nowadays is microchipping their dogs with that information. We just talked about that. Much more efficient way to go. Did some other checking, and we still are requiring our dogs to be vaccinated for rabies. Of course, dogs just can't be out on the run and loose, and of course, we have ordinance for like dangerous and nuisance dogs too. So with that, just making this much more efficient, I think, for the city and for the residents on the licensure end of things. That's
Very
all.
good. Well, while we're on pets, before we do our vote here, Chief, could you hand a little advice out for folks that are dealing with obnoxious dogs? Let's use the word obnoxious dogs. I got a call from somebody and their neighbor or two doors down within their fence has like 3 German Shepherds that are just barking and barking, and one time, 1 or 2 of them got over the fence and cornered his wife in their area. She had to jump over the fence to the pool. 911, right?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. If you're having any issues with animals in the city, we do have ordinances that cover barking and disturbing animals. If it lasts for longer than 10 minutes, please call 911. We'll come out and we'll take, proper enforcement action. We have regulations or ordinances regulating animals running at large as well. So if you have an issue with any animals, call 911 and we'll investigate and handle accordingly.
Thank you. Okay, that was just a quick sidebar. Any other discussion on this? We have a motion and we have a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
just one more
Kraskowiak.
point. Other cities in the state are doing this, including some of our neighbors. Ramsey has already done it. Anoka's already done it. So again, just totally in favor of this.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are up to item 11, consider feasibility report and order public hearing and assessment hearing for street reconstruction project 23-1. Mr. Hanson, there's never a time of the year where we shouldn't be talking about streets, apparently.
There we go.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about our 2023 Street Reconstruction Program, 23-1, and I have a few slides to share with you that will call out some of the highlights of the project we're planning for next year. So a little bit of background to start with. The streets that we're recommending for reconstruction in 2023 were rated as deficient in poor condition by our staff in the spring of 2021, so we have been looking at these streets for a few years. The streets consist of the original pavement that was placed on them and are on average over 30 years old. And then, of course, as always, we work very close with our Public Works Streets Department to find out where they're spending the most time patching potholes and maintaining streets, and that's where we go. So that is what we're proposing for next year. One project, 4.5 miles of local streets, and that's going to be from 126th Avenue north to and including 131st Avenue between Coon Creek Boulevard and Shenandoah Boulevard. The scope of the work includes resurfacing the roads, replacing any damaged curb and gutter, repairing storm and sanitary manholes. We will be replacing plugged fire hydrants and adjacent water main valves. A plugged fire hydrant is a fire hydrant where the bottom of it exists within the groundwater table. It has to be plugged so that we can pump it out after we use it. Those are the ones that stand the greatest risk of failure in the future. So that's what we're focusing on. We will be proposing to construct a new 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk on the north side of 131st Avenue. That's going to be from Coon Creek Boulevard past Shenandoah Boulevard to the Wildwood Park Trail connection. And then lastly, we will be upgrading all of the city-owned street lights to LED. Our project schedule includes a second neighborhood meeting in January of 2023. We plan to request council hold a public hearing and assessment hearing on the projects on February 21st, and then approving the plans and specifications on that same evening. Awarding a contract for construction on April 18th. May 2nd would be the date that we would request council adopt the assessments. In the spring of 2023, prior to the construction starting, but before any work begins, we plan to hold a neighborhood park meeting where we get out with the contractor. We have schedules in hand at that point, and then we can answer really a lot of the detailed questions that people are going to have for us about how we're going to stage the project, when exactly we'll be working on certain streets, things of that nature. And then construction will go generally between May and October of 2023. Letters will be sent of all the project contact information. Construction schedules will be sent, and then frequently asked questions will be sent to homeowners before we do any work. There are weekly updates available on the city website. In fact, people can sign up to receive notifications when those updates are posted. And then new in 2023, we are also going to have the ability to send people text messages of when updates are posted for street reconstruction. Estimated project costs. The total estimated cost, this includes all of the work to design, administer, all the construction materials testing that we have to do, and the construction costs is $6.1 million. It would be funded by a variety of different city funds, including $997,000 in assessments, special assessments. And those assessment rates for 2023 are proposed to be $2,365 for a single-family home. All single-family residences will be paying the same. It does not matter if you are a corner lot or an interior lot. Everybody pays that amount. All duplex, townhomes, apartments, properties will pay $31 per front foot. Commercial properties pay twice that amount at $59 per front foot, and then industrial properties another 30% on top of commercial at $75 per front foot. There are no of the latter two properties in next year's project. There is one twin home.
And
All the
there's-
rest are single-family properties.
And Mr. Hanson, and if your property has frontage on 130th and on 131st, you only pay for one of those streets, right?
Correct. That's correct. Corner lots do not pay any more under our policy.
Yep. This one wasn't a corner, but same thing.
We get that question a lot, so thank you. Assessment payment options, there's a few different assessment ways to pay off an assessment. So the public hearing notices presumably will be going out in January if council elects to proceed with the project. And that notice will contain this information, but it's a little tricky to read and understand. However, one option is to pay the assessment between May 3rd, after it's adopted by the council, and then there's a 30-day interest-free window of which they can pay with no interest. The assessments do accrue interest, which is to cover our bonding costs for the project. So option 2, after June 30th, interest does start to accrue, and then in mid-November of 2023, that will be transferred over to the county, and they can pay the assessment plus any interest that's accrued between that time period, June 3rd and mid-November. And then the third option is to simply let it roll onto your property taxes and pay it off over 10 years. And if you were to choose that option as a property owner for a single-family home, that would amount to another $320 per year for each of 10 years. So that's another way that we recognize that these projects do come up, so there is the way to pay it off over 10 years for when we need to repair the street. We do have street reconstruction videos that walk property owners through the entire process and answer frequently asked questions available on our city website. We encourage all of the affected property owners to review those. And I would be happy to answer any questions that council has. However, we would recommend that the council take the following actions here tonight. And those are adopting the resolution, accepting the feasibility report, ordering the public hearing and the improvement for the project on February 21st of next year, adopting the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed and order the preparation of the proposed assessment rolls, and then lastly, adopting resolutions setting an assessment date for February 21st. Assessment hearing date, excuse me. Be happy to answer any questions council has.
All right, questions for Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
You let me go through? Okay, thank you. Yeah, question for Mr. Hanson. The project in Ward 1, kind of the Oaks of Shenandoah, I had a question on, it's going to be full depth reclamation on this thing all the way through. It says in here, includes removal and replacement of damaged curb and gutter. I thought that on the other side of Shenandoah, that all that curb and gutter was replaced. That's like a brand new development there, and I've been talking to people and they're really pleased with that. Is this different?
That's a great question, Councilmember Griscoviac. When we looked at the curb on the other side of Shenandoah, and there are other streets within Coon Rapids where we have had the same results from our review, the curb, at some point, it reaches a tipping point where you just have to replace it all. And that was what we saw there. Normally, we replace it with every water main, significant water main pipe replacement. Not all of it is going to be replaced on the west side of Shenandoah in this development. We're looking at about 50 to 60% will be replaced, but not 100%. There are some streets where the curb is in pretty good shape. So per our policy, we replace what needs to be replaced. But we do try to combine lengths, so we're not doing just short stretches. Try to address the aesthetics with that at the same time.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Rayburn, do you have a question?
Mr. Hanson, I just want to thank you and also the whole Public Works and Engineering Department for what you do with our street reconstruction in the city. I can tell you, I can notice when I get outside of the city to other cities that won't be named, but the roads are not maintained as well as they are here, and we do a great job for the value and the cost that is put into it. So I believe that they're, you know, the quality of how our roads are is great for the cost that we spend. And also for your communications with the neighbors and the community, and I know that you always are open to talking with folks about it. And then finally, I just want to mention that when this does take place, your property value generally goes up along with it, correct?
Well, that's how we justify the assessment. It helps with the property value. People do look at the condition of their street prior to moving into a home. We have done a benefit analysis. We believe the benefit is actually twice what we're assessing. But yes,
Right.
it is a
Thank you.
benefit.
So with that, I would make.
Hang on,
Oh, go ahead.
hang on. Let's make sure we don't have any
Sure.
other questions or discussion for Mr. Hanson. Mr. Hanson, there's a qualifier in here, and it says replace all city-owned streetlights with LED. Are there other streetlights there that we don't own?
Thanks for the question. Most of them, I would say about 90%, 95% are city. The ones that we don't own are owned by Connexus, and those are on 131st. And those are the wood poles, but they already have LED fixtures on them. So in our case, we're going to be evaluating the pole and the fixture. Some cases it'll be both. Some cases it'll just be the fixture, depending on what really needs replacement.
Okay, all right. Are there any really great questions we're missing? Okay, all right. Councilmember Rayrauer?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 23-1 sub 4, accepting the feasibility report and ordering a public hearing for February 21st, 2023.
Do you want these separate,
do them
Dave, or do you want
together?
these?
Okay.
Okay.
And adopt resolution number 23-1 sub 10, declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of a proposed assessment roll. And adopt resolution number 23-1 sub 11, setting an assessment hearing date for February 21st, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Rayrauer and a second by Carlson. Is there further discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
maybe I should have asked this of Mr. Hanson beforehand, but the new sidewalk, I think that's a great improvement, a safety improvement. People go from Wildwood all the way, you know, to our park on the lake there. A question on the sidewalk, though. The sidewalk that we constructed on 131st that is west of Coon Creek Boulevard, in some places it seems like it really goes like this, and instead of being more flat like the roadway. Was that a construction project thing, or why is that? I would like to see this nice and flat.
It's a great question. When we come back and retrofit these sidewalks,
Okay.
one of the things we have to look at is trying to, minimize our footprint and our impacts. And sometimes that involves moving it a little bit closer to the curb sometimes to save a tree, for example, or to avoid an impact for a utility company. Sometimes there's a private utility, a big electrical box that's in the way that we have to avoid. So we try our best to make it nice and straight and perfectly offset and linear, but when you come back after the fact to build these, they just sometimes wind up that way. But they still meet all of the ADA requirements that we are held to when we build these things.
Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other discussion, or I'm sorry, any other questions, discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And I'll bet you're going to stay right there for our next item, or?
I don't have a presentation on that.
Oh, you
but
don't?
I could answer
Oh.
any questions.
Well, you could do that from your desk, and I'm not going to hold you there. All right, we're going to, item 12 is to consider a proposal for engineering services for the 2023 sanitary sewer lining program and authorize execution of agreement 23-3. And this is more of those 36-inch reinforced concrete pipes again, huh?
That's correct. Actually, this is the point in the system where we transition from 42-inch to 36-inch. So
Okay.
where we left off with the previous two projects, those were both 42-inch. So just some background, Mayor and Council, folks at home, this is a continuation of our sanitary sewer lining program that we've been doing for many, many years. We first started with all of the small diameter service pipes that are on most of the local street network. Now we're transitioning into the larger pipe diameters. So this pipe itself carries a large amount of the sewer shed within the city. We've done two projects prior to. Ultimately, the sewer system discharges into the Met Council lift station L34 off of Coon Rapids Boulevard Extension. This particular project is recommended, and we will come back to council once we have plans prepared and cost estimates. At this point, we're estimating the cost of these improvements would be $2 million, but the item that is before you tonight is just for the professional engineering services for the project. So this spring we'll be coming back to council once we have the plans prepared and a final cost estimate for permission to seek bids. But the work would go from Egret 99th Avenue west along 99th Avenue to Hanson Boulevard, then north up to Mississippi Boulevard.
And when they get the design services done, will we know then, or do you already know, are they gonna be having to obstruct or block off 99th at Egret again?
I figured you would ask that question, Mayor.
That was kind of a
Thank
big
you.
thing last time.
Yes, there will probably have to be some detours with the project. It's just kind of the nature of the work, but probably, potentially not at that particular location, depending on how we can get the pipe back into the sewer back into the pipe. So, but there will likely have to be some level of detour associated with the work. Most of the pipe, though, the temporary, and this is the temporary bypass pipe, which we need because there is just so much sewer flow that it has to be temporarily conveyed. We can actually line smaller diameter sewer under flow. We can line the manholes under flow as well, but we will need a temporary bypass pipe and pump to be set up, likely in the area of Mississippi Boulevard and Hanson this time. That will likely require us to do some level of detour. But all of those parameters will be thought out, and we'll be able to answer all the questions and the particulars of that when we come back to council, once we have everything designed.
Okay. And I don't really like to spend much time thinking about what's actually flowing,
Right.
so.
As part of the previous project, and we'll do this as part of this project as well, we always do an amount of cleaning and televising upstream and then make an evaluation. So that's where this is coming from, is based on the data and the review of that segment that we reviewed when we did the last lining project, which wrapped up early this year.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I was still thinking about that upstream in the flow, but go ahead. Councilmember Raybrower?
Well, I was just gonna add the two things you don't ever wanna have a problem with is water and sewer. And you generally don't think about either of those things until there is a problem. So I appreciate that we're doing this work and the proactive nature of it, because we definitely don't want sewer issues.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Geisler?
I'll make a motion for the council to accept the proposal from SEH for engineering services for the 2023 sanitary sewer lining program and authorize the execution of the letter of engagement in accordance with the proposal dated November 8th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Geisler and a second by Raybrower. Is there further discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
Just a question on the amount of the budget impact. Is it $141,000? Is that what I'm seeing in here?
The overall budget impact is going to eventually
no.
be $2
For the
million. That's what we have
consultant.
budgeted for the project. But it's, yes, for this particular scope of services, it's just the 141, which most of it applies to the construction admin
Right.
part of the equation. So if, that would only apply if an actual construction project happens.
I got you. So it's for the engineering services by SEH. And I know that it says in here, SEH has been doing this for a long time for the city, but is that our only consultant? I'm just wondering, 141,000, is there other, do we look at other consultants to make sure they're remaining competitive? in that field too?
That's a good question, thank you. It's a specialty engineering service, and there's not many engineering firms around that are qualified.
Okay.
We have great confidence in SEH, working with them on numerous projects that we feel very comfortable getting a quote from them and proceeding with this. There are other engineering firms, but it would probably take staff a significant amount of time and them to be able to get up to speed on our system. SEH has all the historical background on our system. They did our comprehensive plan and
Right.
made recommendations there as well, so we feel very comfortable working with them.
Right. Well, appreciate the explanation. That makes sense. I mean, it's specialized. They've been with us for a long time. And I know we've never had any problems and the projects are coming out good, so.
They also have a lot of the specialty equipment that we need or is needed to assist with the continued evaluation as we step through the design steps of the project.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are on to item 13, which is to consider an introduction of an ordinance regulating the possession of catalytic converters. Mr. Brody or Chief Stanky, why would anybody actually possess a catalytic converter if it's not attached to their car and operating?
Maybe I'll let Chief Stanky answer that particular question, and then I can, if there are any specific questions on the ordinance itself, I can handle those.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor, Council. Catalytic converters are valuable to thieves in that they're made up of precious metals. So, this is a nationwide issue. This crime affects, private citizens, businesses, as well as auto dealerships, because these thieves target catalytic converters. They saw them off of vehicles. They sell them to metal recyclers for pennies on the dollar. Unfortunately, it causes thousands of dollars in damages and loss to the victims who are left, holding the bag and having to make up for the loss of their catalytic converter. It's a nationwide crime. I think a couple weeks back, there was a federal crackdown on this. We all learned that it's a multi-million-dollar industry. Who would have thought? But it's tough to enforce because catalytic converters don't have individual markings on them. They don't have serial numbers. So when officers or investigators encounter them while on patrol or during investigations, there's no way to track whether or not these catalytic converters are stolen. So the subjects are allowed to remain in possession of them, and they likely go on and sell them to the recyclers, and they continue in their theft efforts. The reason why this would be a valuable tool is because this would give our officers or our investigators a tool to use to investigate possession of a catalytic converter not attached to a vehicle further. For instance, they encounter someone at 3 o'clock in the morning in a vehicle with 10 catalytic converters and no receipts for them. Chances are that that party's probably up to no good. This would give us a tool to use to investigate that incident further and perhaps take some enforcement action.
Very good. Do you have any questions of Mr. Brody or Chief Stanky? I like, we would have gotten on this, I know we would have, but I like how this was a resident that caught this in the newspaper. Bloomington had just done it and sent me an email the morning it was in the paper. Hey, should we do something like this? And I said, well, I'm going to send it on to staff and see what they think, but it seems like a good idea. So I let him know today that we were introducing it tonight. All right. So if there's no questions on this is just an introduction. So we are going to consider the ordinance regulating the possession of catalytic converters, Chapter 7-700, introduced. And we will take action on this on our next council meeting then? Okay, very good. And item 14 is to consider Resolution 22-112, supporting Anoka County Joint Law Enforcement Council's renewal of legislation for future public safety projects. Chief, did you want to hit the highlights of this, or?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor, Council. As you all know, the city of Coon Rapids has taken part in the Joint Law Enforcement Council of Anoka County for over 50 years. Presently, Councilmember Johnson and myself are members of the JLEC board, as are elected officials and chief law enforcement officers of every municipality in Anoka County. We're being asked by the JLEC board, as is every other municipality, to pass a resolution in support of renewing legislation which will allow for future tax efforts and bonding for public safety initiatives moving forward. These would be county-wide public safety initiatives. Why this is important, because this would relieve those tax burdens from individual municipalities for paying for these public safety initiatives. An example of how this has been used in the past is the public safety data system was purchased through this public safety levy. It was a multi-million-dollar system which is used countywide by public safety agencies. That operates the countywide record system as well as the computer-aided dispatch system, which are both vital systems for law enforcement in this day and age. However, this current legislation is set to expire at the end of 2023. What we're asking for is that it is extended for an additional 10 years for any future unforeseen public safety initiatives that should arise. There's no doubt at some point the public safety data system is going to need to be upgraded or possibly even replaced, and there just isn't millions of dollars out there to do that. So this would provide a funding source for initiatives such as that as they arise moving forward.
So, Chief, I had one question in here, and it said, the JLEC and the Anoka County Board support a legislative change to allow the use of specific bonding authority. Does Anoka County support this now?
For that, I would like to defer to Councilmember Johnson, because he actually, he was at the most recent meeting. Mr. Mayor, I don't have the answer. I wasn't able to attend the meeting last Friday, and the chiefs are actually meeting on this later on in this week, so I don't want to provide inaccurate information. However, I know Councilmember Johnson was at the meeting, the board meeting.
So there was an Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting at Anoka County last week, and there was a conversation with various chiefs of police and certain county board members that were on the committee and certain county board members that attended the meeting. And I want to be very clear to the citizens of Anoka County that the Anoka County Board supports public safety and efforts to fund public safety in Anoka County. There are some things that the Anoka County Board is looking at as to whether or not they will ultimately get behind this. The whole board hasn't voted on it yet. So specific board members have expressed significant support for it, but it hasn't made it out of their committee process yet to go to the actual full county board. So we might consider tailoring or just even removing that part of the resolution, just to make it clear that we're not intending to speak on behalf of the county board, but there's been wide support for public safety among the county board members, and that really does include all of them throughout time. And indeed, they supported this back 10 years ago when they originally went to the legislature to get this special taxing authority statute passed. And one little interesting piece of history, by the way, that I just want to kind of get out there as a part of the discussion on this is the original request from the Anoka County Board to the legislature was actually to have levy authority until 2033. And it was only in the process of legislation and haggling over whether it should be a 20-year authority versus a 10-year authority that a compromise was reached, and Anoka County agreed and the legislature agreed to have it at 10 years. There are certain things that Joint Law Enforcement Council would like to look at using the public safety levy money for in the future, and one of those things is what we call the protection of critical infrastructure, which is, people might recall, following what is commonly referred to as the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis, there was a precinct, the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis, that came under attack, and there was no real way to protect it. And then subsequent to that, there was also the need to protect and surround the Brooklyn Center Police Department. And that was a very expensive endeavor for Brooklyn Center, and only because there had been stuff available in Minneapolis and nearby were they able to quickly respond to that and protect it. And that would be one potential project where funds from this levy could be used if it were approved by the Joint Law Enforcement Council and if the county board ultimately elected to levy. What this really is creating a tool for the Joint Law Enforcement Council and for Anoka County to use should there be a general consensus or broad agreement among law enforcement, elected officials, including city council members and ultimately county officials, on how we might specifically levy for the purpose of protecting public safety in Anoka County. I did take a look at the resolution a little deeper before the meeting and sent an email to City Attorney Brody, and I just wanted to see if I could add a little language to clarify the resolution and offer a friendly amendment, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'd be happy to make the motion as well. Specifically, there is a whereas clause that says, whereas the JLEC supports a legislative change to allow, and then it says, use of the bonding capital notes issuance authority provided in Minnesota statute 383E.21 to fund countywide public safety projects until December 31, 2033. I would like to add after, in that very first sentence, after the words allow the, and then I would like to add County of Anoka to levy taxes and then it would continue on use of the bonding and capital notes issuance authority, so that it's clear that this proposed new legislation would also include levy authority in addition to bonding and capital notes issuance authority. And then in the now therefore provision, where it says now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Coon Rapids does with this action support and endorse the extension of the, and it, as originally drafted, said existing bonds and capital note issuance authority. I would like to add after the words extension of the, I would like to add levy and in there so that it's clear that we're supporting a levy authority. And with that suggested amendment, I would move this resolution 22-112.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Johnson and we second by Geisler. Mr. Brody, any issues with those amendments?
No. I did have we've looked at it. It doesn't really change necessarily. I think it makes it clearer. I don't think it necessarily changes it. Again, this is just a resolution supporting the legislative change. It will be the legislative change that will be what is ultimately needed. So
Sure.
The language is fine as proposed by Councilmember Johnson.
Very good.
And then I guess Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think that the thing I do want to be clear about to people is what we're asking for is not even though it's framed as kind of an extension or whatever, this is a new law we're asking the legislature to pass. So the other one will sunset 2023. We have to work together with the Joint Law Enforcement Council and the county board to see if we can get support throughout Anoka County to, and ultimately support by the county board and Anoka County to really sponsor this legislation to the legislature and recommend this as a new statute. So it's by no means a done deal. It's just us expressing support for a continuation of that. And if I'm not mistaken, and I hope I'm not, give or take a little on either side, this levy in the past, I think when you look at how much it is like per household, it's in the nature of like $10 per household. So I really would, over time, it's been, several $1 million. I think not quite $10 million, but under that. But it's been a tremendous investment that has been a tremendous asset for law enforcement and the protection of public safety in Anoka County. And we just think it's a good tool for the county board and joint law enforcement council to have. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. We are now at the open mic public comment portion of the meeting. Is anybody here to address council for open mic? You're just here for the entertainment value? All right. All right, if nobody's
Really
here.
heard all about sewers today.
All right, if you're not here for open mic, then we'll close that portion. And we do have a report on a previous open mic. And that was a response to Benard Schatz on Wren Street. And at the November 15th meeting, he requested that the city council consider adopting a new code to address excessive leaves. He expressed concern about neighboring properties that are not maintained well and that have leaves that blow into his yard and present a potential hazard. The property maintenance staff does receive numerous complaints about leaves and yard maintenance in the fall, but city code does not address this topic in large part because there is no practical way of enforcing such provisions. And I kind of skipped over he's going to receive the full response here. There's a couple paragraphs I kind of skipped, but that's really the takeaway is there's really no way of saying you have leaves in your yard because everybody picks their leaves up at a different time.
Leaves.
Yeah. Right, and suddenly they're not in your yard, they're in the neighbor's yard, good wind and prevailing southwest wind. So, but Mr. Schatz did get a response from us, and if I just encourage him to reach out to his council member or myself, or if he wants further information on that. And we are to other business. Other business to come before council?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson?
I just wanted to say the second annual tree lighting was wonderful. It was pretty amazing to have the fireworks there too. Hopefully one of these years we're gonna, I don't understand this, but the timing of things is such that it got cold that night. Like really cold, and it hadn't been cold the day before, and frankly, hours after it was warmer, which I didn't fully understand. But it was wonderful to see people come out for it, and it's an exciting time in the city.
It was really a fun night, and one thing we did, we added patio heaters on the stage, and those really worked. They were nominally effective spread around, but the two on the stage, the choir gathered around those, and they got some heat from those. And I mentioned it that night. We have a 4-page project list where there's 25 individuals named that had responsibilities to do with this. So I'm not going to start naming and thanking individuals, but I do have to thank the Coon Rapids High School Raven Street project, led by our great friend Amy Johnson. The Coon Rapids High School Honor Society, who was helping out there. Coon Rapids Community Strength Foundation, who wrote the checks. Coon Rapids Fire Department, who is so involved with everything. And the Coon Rapids Police Department, just as involved. The Coon Rapids Ice Center and the staff for generously hosting us, letting us take over a portion of the Ice Center for this event. Anoka Ramsey Community College for hosting the overflow parking. Scouts from Troops 406 and 524. Coon Rapids Public Works, including our forester who oversaw the actual moving of the tree, our streets department, and our parks department, who are all involved. Bunker Hills Golf Course and Kendall's for setting us up with 10 patio heaters. We were also generously sponsored by the Twin Cities Gateway Visitors Bureau, and we want to thank our Rocky, our Snowman, and of course Santa, who were out there all night. Yeah, it was really, really fun. And we're learning a little bit about fire pits. We're learning that we need to season the cement a little bit and maybe get them dried out a little bit. Those were extra fireworks we didn't expect.
If I may, I have to throw a shout out to our forester, Tommy, because the night before, the wind really kicked up.
Yeah.
And people in Coon Rapids care so much about this event that our forester went and tethered his truck to the tree so that we had some level of security that it wasn't going to blow over, which I think is bold. Because this was a big tree. And bad things could have happened, but they didn't, and everything went off without a hitch. So.
Yeah, and the folks that had originally planted the tree, that donated the tree from their yard, were there to watch it lit up, and they had some family there, and it was just very nice. Okay, Councilmember Raybauer?
Just have a reminder that, as you talked about, it's getting a lot colder out there. The recommendation is not to leave your car running unattended. I know we want to warm them up, but more vehicles are being stolen while running. Including if you park in your garage, don't leave your keys in your car even if it's in the garage. So always lock your car, take your keys, and remove your valuables. I wanted to also give a reminder that we have catalytic converter marking kits available. They can be picked up in our lobby 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And finally, it is the holiday season, and we have a lot of donation opportunities too. It can be dropped off at Coon Rapids City Hall, again, 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, all the way through December 15th. So we have things the food shelf is looking for, staples, canned goods. Toys for Joy is looking for new unwrapped toys. Alexandra House is doing a winter coat drive. And Granny's Closet is looking for household and personal care items. So all good opportunities. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then, Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
The Light Up Coon Rapids, so if you want to be in a holiday spirit, the tour guide is out. So there's 22 different entries in the 2022 Holiday Lighting Contest. So you can go to the city website, pick up the map, and go drive around the city and see the great light displays that people have put up in their yards. There's 2 different categories. There's one category for motion lights and then another one for just the static lights.
And this is the week too, because I think the judging is Thursday night on that, if I recall right.
I think it's coming up this week, yeah. So.
So you want to get out there. All right. Any other business? Mr. Stemwell, anything we should know about?
Mayor, Council, other thing I would mention is we will consider commission appointments coming up pretty quick here, and we do have some vacancies on commission, so if folks are interested in participating in commission, you can look at our city website. Right now, it's actually kind of front and center on the main page, and that'll lead you to some other things, and if you have any questions, I would recommend calling the city clerk's office. Joan Lensmeyer would be happy to help you.
All right, very good. Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Carlson to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.